go. Looks like we're at pretty close till 5 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call the March 29th Special Seward City Council meeting to order. And Stephen, could you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens. Madam Clerk, I know that it's right at 5 o'clock, so we might have some council members trying to make it, but if we could go ahead and call for the roll, please.
Tonight's roll call for City Council. Wells?
Yes.
Osenga is on his way, I believe, running late. DeMoss was in Anchorage earlier, so I'm not sure if we'll see her. McClure?
Here.
Casagranda? Apparently, I haven't heard from her. Calhoun?
Here.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
You have a quorum, and there are 5 representatives from Historic Preservation, Chair Cease, Vice Chair Ward, Commissioner Benoit, Commissioner Lemaster, and Commissioner Walker.
Great, excellent. So next on the agenda is citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. And just for HP, you don't have to make comments at this time. We'll make a motion, we'll go into committee of the whole, and then we'll be able to just talk back and forth. But is there anyone else signed in to speak?
No, ma'am.
Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak during this portion of the meeting? Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda and consent agenda. I need a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
I second.
And then nothing is on the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, if we could call for the vote, please.
Voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda, Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved, and as you said, there are no consent items.
Thank you. Next is other new business. I'm going to go ahead right now and I move to go into the committee of the whole to discuss with all our boards and commissions, including Historic Preservation, Port and Commerce Advisory Board, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I do need a second.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? I'll just say my plan is to, continue the committee of the whole. I know that we're, tied to some specific times that we've advertised, but we'll just keep that going and not go in and out of the formal meeting and committee of the whole, unless there's any objection. Okay. Madam Clerk?
Voting on the motion to move into committee of the whole, Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
And Mayor Terry?
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Okay, so we are now in committee of the whole. So now it's more of the work session where it's not as formal and we can talk back and forth without, we're on the record, but we don't have to worry about, the rules, protocols and procedures. So starting off with Historic Preservation, I've been tasked by the clerk. We're going to check a date really quick. So the state has come down and done a great training with council 2 years. Once right at the start of COVID, and then this last year we did a council retreat, and the state will come down and give state statute training, Open Meetings Act training, and we want to make that available to all the boards and commissions. So we're just going to check with folks. The options are in the evenings between May 10th and 13th, so 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th, or on a Saturday, May 14th, and the training will be in person. So just generally, folks can throw out what their availability might be.
Sadly, I'm available on all those days.
Right, that's great.
Do you know about what time of day you're talking about?
Do you know what time, in the evenings?
Evening, it could start 5 or 6. It's whenever, it's a good time to start. And then Saturday, we started with council at 10, so in the morning, and we went to 1-ish.
Yeah, just after.
So it was a few hours. And we brought lunch in.
And I guess to just be more helpful, it's like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or that Saturday during the day.
Doesn't change. I'm
Yeah,
still
okay.
Does that Saturday, is that the second Saturday in May?
It's the,
It's the second Saturday.
I mean, the second Thursday, forgive me. If it's
Oh,
the second
yes.
Saturday, it's the second, okay. So that's our regular meeting. so we would not be
It is.
available
I'm
for
not
that.
available. Yay.
Or substitute it out, either
Yeah,
way.
that's true.
Saturday would be okay with me.
Saturday?
I'm good.
I'm more open on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings.
Okay. And we're checking with all the boards and commissions, so we'll get input and
All
then,
right, I'm gonna take Thursday off the board, if that's all right, just because it's their regular meeting and work session night.
okay.
Okay.
Great, now we are going to, people say I'm very loud, so I'm gonna push my mic. I am loud. So now we are going to go into, talking to each of the boards about their, workload. We even postponed your resolution, which will be on the next meeting, not tonight's meeting, but the next meeting. You'll actually have 2 resolutions on that meeting, just so we can talk about your priorities. So we can go either way. I have a couple questions about what you meant by a few things or what you guys were thinking. Or you guys can start off and talk to us first. It's up to you as a body. Which would you prefer?
Let's go ahead with your questions.
Okay, so, which I know what all these words mean, but I just want to know what the intent was. So, under the Stewart Historic Structures and Site, engender the preservation and use of the Jesse Lee home properties for park use. What was the board's intent behind that? Or commission, sorry.
So, we support that the Jesse Lee Park or the Jesse Lee lands be used for park, which we lobbied planning and zoning last year and did get it changed from residential to park, and we do understand that it can be reversed back, or part of it can be used for park and part of it can be used for something else. But really, what we want to be involved in is the memorial aspect of whatever we do for the Jesse Lee Memorial Park.
Okay. Zach?
Do my fellow, okay.
So it's more about looking at what the memorial, looking at the concept and the plans for the memorial.
And also doing research. We've gotten really good at research.
Yeah.
And so if there's any research to be done, I think we'd be more than happy to support that.
Yeah, that's great.
That's kind of the angle actually that we were hoping to achieve, to duplicate what we've done around town with the historic sites. You know, doing that for the history of the Jesse Lee home, which is not just to Seward, but it's also to the whole state.
And even the nation.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Great, go ahead.
So could that be worded more in that vein then?
Yes,
Come up with some good words?
yes, it would.
I'm not even sure about engender.
Yeah, I know. But to emphasize the memorial aspect and the historical, yeah, that's perfect.
I'm sorry, I was.
Oh, no, I think that's a great, I love that.
I missed it.
Oh, she was just saying that to change the language to be more contributing to the memorial, because I love that walking tour, like those, every
Yes,
time I drive down a
that
street
is
and
the
see
intent.
those. They're
That's what
beautiful.
So,
Okay.
we can amend that?
Well, maybe we'll work with your admin support and talk about, because that'll come back to council, and council can make an amendment and change it.
We will also be meeting with you again in April on the 25th for our first reporting. Could we report that change then?
Well, I think what we want to do, so we postponed this resolution, so it'll come back to us, and then we
okay.
can just make our own motion. So we'll work with staff on what that might look like, and then we can provide it to the commission just
Okay.
to look at it.
All right. And other questions?
Yeah, track and monitor the progress of the Fort Raymond subdivision.
Okay, this can be removed
Okay.
because planning and zoning actually took care of that.
And then,
It looks like this is almost from our last year's.
Yeah,
Well, and then the other thing is now there's been a delay, because this came before us, so some things are kind of getting knocked off already, so. And then, under Seward Historic Preservation Plans, promulgate economic incentives, historic preservation and education, which again, I understand all the words, I just wanted to hear like what that looks like in practice.
So, the historic signage around town meets that goal. So again, we need to write this in such a such a fashion. I'm sorry, I am not well. I don't have COVID though. I just have an ear problem. So we need to reword this.
Well, this is-
Excuse me?
So
May I just address Director Saylor?
Yeah.
Would it be okay if myself or Sue, or Vice Chair Ward met with you and we reworded things to, and deleted things? Okay. Mayor Terry?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, be happy to do that.
And then maybe administration can just provide us amendments.
Yeah. That's not the place, sorry.
And then, sorry, I'm skipping around a little bit. So going back up to the top bullet under historic structures and sites, review local projects and recommendations about the effect on properties identified in the local historic preservation inventory.
All right, so this would be in fact, this just came up in our last meeting. We have an existing historic inventory list of all historic properties in town through 1942. And in our project last year, we expanded in our research some of those properties. And what we want to do is go through and see if any of our work should actually be included in that inventory. And so that's what that was referring to. And then,
Oh, good. Because I thought it maybe meant like through perhaps the building process that it would be required to go through your commission, which I would not be in favor of that.
oh, you're not going to like a resolution that's coming later then.
Yeah. Well, council.
Anyways, no, it does not mean that.
Yeah.
It's relative to us keeping up our historic inventory in town, and where we find additional information that would benefit that inventory list, then we would update that.
So that's not the second bullet point, though?
Well, it's kind of a combination, it goes with it, because the second one, it's created, and we add to it as we find, properties that are not listed. And in fact, we have a second wave now, a second inventory that needs to begin from 1940 through the 50 years, and then there's probably another one beyond that, because they're to be done every 50 years.
So I guess, am I the only person on council? This first bullet makes me think that the commission would be reviewing potential projects, and I'm not personally in favor of that.
I agree.
I don't know how other people on council feel about that.
I absolutely see exactly why you're...
So that might preempt any potential resolutions, because there's 4 of us here, I don't know if there's support to have the commission review projects, development projects.
So the resolution that you're going to approve tonight is based directly off this?
No, we won't, we'll approve, this got postponed so that we could meet with you, because I had some questions at least. And then this resolution is what you passed is the language of what you passed to come to us for approval, which will be on our next meeting.
Right.
So it got postponed.
Well, I'm going to apologize right now. There's going to be mistakes in here because I didn't spend a lot of time renewing this, because we kind of did it, I thought, generically last year. So I thought it was more an issue of updating, but obviously I should have spent more time.
No, you don't have to apologize. Honestly, I think that's what happens with potentially every board and commission. It just gives us an opportunity to talk about it tonight. So it's not something that needs an apology.
Well, okay.
Okay. So I talked a lot. Are there any other questions for the commission, or do you guys have any comments?
Those were pretty much mine,
Okay.
too. So,
Those were the majority of the questions.
yeah, just to make the wording more clear and succinct, I think, you know,
Okay.
because we've spent some time in the past, just, not necessarily you, but everybody, just sort of rubber stamping and sending things on to the next year, and I think it's time to rethink the wording
Yeah.
and make everything fresh, and that's kind of what we're hoping for, you know?
Thank you. I can clearly see your points.
I was curious as to, again, in terms of review of local projects, particularly in the context of history,
Yeah.
I would think that there would be a role if there was an impact on something historic. So I'm not real sure what your objection is in terms of, you know, historical review.
Yeah, I guess my personal objection is that it's an extra layer of regulation or perhaps impediment or delay to developments that might be happening. So I would not be in favor of something like that.
Because the flip side of that is that we are mostly into research, and if there is any question, we would be happy to step forward. And if there was a project that had some kind of impact or historic significance, we would like to be involved in that, at least from a research, so that decisions can be made on historic properties in a more appropriate context. That was, I think that was our thinking. We're not interested in holding a project up, but we do want to make sure that we have some really lovely historic properties in this town. And some of the properties don't even have buildings on them. They're, you know, they're just a historic site. I think you'll find with Fort Raymond, some of that World War II stuff is starting to get attention by people.
So what did you envision? Wouldn't you be more of a resource? Because it seems like you're trying to make
Right, and I think that's where I want to make sure, because if we do some rewrite on this, it would be really nice to at least not mandate. I don't think we're interested in mandating, but we want to make sure that before steps are taken, that we've looked at some of the historic sides of some of the potential properties, and the only reason I say that is I have a house that I'm restoring, and I was told we should knock it down. But upon further research, it's now on the historic walking tour, because in fact, the Manthe family is really well known, but nobody would have known that until I had stepped forward and did that on my own, because I bought the house. And that's that's kind of where I'm coming from, is we have so much history in this town that I hate to see any of it lost.
Yeah.
And so I'm not looking for a mandate, but I am looking for, hey guys, this looks like it might be a potential property, can you do some research on it? And if that came from this group, or planning and zoning, or PACCAB, or any of those, I think we'd be really interested in that
I just
part.
see that process as being untenable. Like, there's so many building permits and people, there's confidential proprietary things that people are doing too that might not rise to the level of, having a system in place. I think if someone's interested,
Right.
they can be directed.
And maybe that's probably more the direction we want to go. Someone who is interested, they can ask, or have a mechanism to get the information to us.
Maybe, maybe just the wording there could be something like, be a resource for people researching their own historic
that would be
properties. Or you
perfect.
carefully word it so it doesn't sound like another layer of permitting and overlooking. Because I'm all for preserving history.
Another layer of oversight is just, we are here to serve.
Yeah, something like
I'll
that.
let you go.
Thank you. So during the CUP process, for any construction process, right, the CUP gets posted, letters get mailed out to everybody, and then citizens have the opportunity to come in and speak on that already, correct?
Planning and zoning.
Right.
Yeah.
And so every CUP gets posted, so every chain, if somebody was to buy a piece of property that's a historical piece of property, and they put in a plan, a construction plan, whether it's tear it down or remodel it or whatever, that's already public info, correct? And everybody already has a chance to come and speak on that?
Where is that posted?
So it's posted with the clerk mailing list, it's in the newspaper, and then it's physically posted on their property.
Correct. So, right.
It's true.
And contained in the P and Z documentation
And the
for packets and things,
Mhm.
yes.
So that would mean if a person were doing something with their property, they've obviously been notified the city's going to look at it, and everyone else can comment on it. So that would be the time where you maybe could get
look at
together
that, yeah.
and do a historical, just check it all out, but because as long as you guys knew at the time that these things happened, I don't see anything wrong with looking at the history and informing people.
Of course, absolutely.
And there's certain areas in town that are more historic than others. So it wouldn't be necessarily, it would be only particular properties that clearly have historic significance, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I guess so we already have a body that's, by state statute, that looks at those property things as necessary. And that's the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they're mandated in
Right,
state
and
statute.
I'm not interested in interfering with
Yeah.
that, but we'll do the research. If there is some question or some interest, it turns out the people that owned my house, he was here in 1905, was a pile driver, probably drove the pilings for the dock, and he was a former mayor, and none of that would have been found if we'd bulldozed it like we were advised. And that's the only thing that concerns me, is it turned out to be pretty worthy. But we didn't know, if we had listened to advice.
Well, the other thing is, if someone buys a house and they don't care about the history,
right.
like we don't want
They
them
could
to.
just say no.
Yeah, well, that's the point, yeah, it's not, but if they're interested, we can give them a lot of cool information
Yeah,
about that property.
I do love that. Go.
Would we be allowed to request of the clerk a list of the properties, and then we can look and see if any of them are historic, and then contact,
You could do
or even present to the P and Z?
I mean, you could personally do a request for information. I don't know if that, come on in.
Come on in.
I don't know if that is proprietary. I don't know what the rules are for releasing building permits information.
Oh. Maybe just like the land, the lot?
Yeah, I don't know if that's confidential, depending on the development, or,
That's not information that's normally provided to me. That's
Yeah.
the building and
Right.
fire department that handles that, for
So-
building permits.
yeah,
And
so I mean, you would have to do a request for information. I just think with so many systems in place, I personally am not gonna task administration with having to provide that to the Historic Preservation Commission on a regular basis. Go ahead.
I have two things, and I received a resolution today regarding the establishment of a historic business district zone.
Yes.
That has not been before the council, so that would
Correct.
definitely be a council decision whether they wanted to enact that zone. But the other thought I had is just voicing a concern about Open Meetings Act, that if you were to get together to discuss these properties that might have a CUP process, it would have to be an open meeting and posted.
Right,
and
even now, we understand, even if it's a committee, it has to be an open meeting, so
Yep.
the clerk told us that.
So I think we already in code have a historic overlay district. Are you aware of that?
It's the
we are,
same,
yeah.
This is Historic Business District Zone.
It's
Okay.
it's the same.
it's the same district.
It's the same outline that's been there for years, but it has never been, created as an ordinance.
Right.
Okay, has that gone to P and Z?
No.
Would it need to go, it would need to go to P and Z before it comes to us? wouldn't it?
I would say that it would go to council first to ensure that you
Oh.
wanted the zone before it went to P and Z.
Right, before, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll have to
and
think about it.
and we have 5 minutes. I do want to say, I wrote down some comments that I really want the attitude and the tone of the commission and the council that we work collaboratively and we are not an adversarial situation. So if you have any questions or if you have any concerns with administration, that needs to come to council because you do respond to us instead of going to the newspaper or to the media. That is not appropriate. And if you want to provide recommendations, we're always happy to hear that. If you make comments in the public, you are more than welcome to as a private citizen everyone has that right in the United States of America. But as a commission, the correct step would be to come to council with any comments. And again, we want the situation, and we've really been working hard as a body and with administration to work collaboratively. And I really feel like if we're all pulling in the same direction, we're just going to be better served. So, just trying to think if there's anything else.
There is for me.
Yep.
So the reason that I went to the paper, the night that meeting occurred, there was no sound. There were 8 people on that Zoom call that could not hear the
Again, you know
statements
what,
that were read.
I just want to interrupt you to say, in the future, if there's any questions about administration or anything that's not going well, you are more than welcome to bring those concerns to council. You're also welcome to, as a private citizen, exercise your right of free speech, and as a private citizen not representing the body. If you have comments like that as a body, it has to be voted on as a body. So I cannot go anywhere and speak for council unless it's been something that's approved by all of council at a meeting.
Well, he published my statement under personal opinion, and the article he wrote himself based on the Zoom meeting that had the sound dubbed into it after the fact.
And I'm just going to say again, if there were, to this day, those comments or concerns have not been provided to council. So in the effort to work collaboratively and be successful on getting good input from the commission, getting good advice from the commission, and what we're tasking you with being successful, if there's questions or concerns with administration, if you provide those back to council, things will be much more successful as opposed to providing comments and questions to the media.
All right? I formally apologize for
You don't have to apologize,
for not
I'm
doing
just-
that role. But I must also say that I feel like my commission is the wicked stepchild.
And so I just want to
I
say
mean,
again,
things that we
so that's
that
why-
we work on.
so that's the problem, is when someone goes into something adversarially, then that's the perception. We fully support the commission. I think we had some good conversation on what we'd like to see the commission work on. We've congratulated you on your great projects. Is there anyone on this dais that has any sort of adversarial or confrontational attitude about the commission? Do we feel like this commission is the ugly stepchild? Or is this a commission that's very successful?
Not at all. I think you guys are doing a good job.
It would be easier for us to have access, though, to properties that are going to be developed that are
So
historic,
again-
so I don't feel like we made any progress.
Yeah, so again, as council, we are all elected by the citizens of Seward, and we appoint people to our commissions that we believe are enacting our wishes. And so that, right now, there's 4 of us here, John wasn't here at the time. You know, and I didn't hear anyone say that that was a good idea to provide you with property development information prior to.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
What I said was, we didn't make any progress on having a way for us to access it without going through the property sign.
Yeah, so again, it doesn't seem like that's a priority for council to have you work on that.
Unless it's historic, and
So again, I think what we talked about today is as a resource, if those property developers would like to use that as a resource, not as a mandate.
And that's fine.
And we'll rework that language and make sure that that's included. Because I think the other thing is providing that information to the building department, so as folks are questioning, then they know where to send those folks if they have questions about the historic nature of their property.
I was going to suggest something like
Okay,
that.
have them
we
included in the system.
actually are working on standards and guidelines for historic preservation that, if approved by planning and zoning and then by council, could actually be handed out by community development to property owners that are looking to develop, remodel, restructure, reconstruct rather, their homes on historic sites or historic buildings.
If they're interested.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Am I allowed to share a personal experience that pertains directly to this?
We have about 2 minutes, and then
Never
we
mind.
need to get to the group.
I'll say it.
Okay.
Not a problem.
All right, any final comments for the good of the order? I think we're moving on to the Port and Commerce Advisory Board. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Overlay slide about the meeting and recess, but I made a makeshift one on here. I made a makeshift.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Okay, next up is Port and Commerce Advisory Board. So you guys, so PACAP can come sit up at the table. Come join us. Join us. Pick a spot.
I went to work at my normal time, but I was up at 4 a.m.
But you really have to. You really enjoy the work and, are we doing what they want us to do? I think that's good.
I know.
John knows today is
Oh, is it too cold now? Sorry. All right, we got a short turnaround time.
Okay. Oh, boy.
So I don't know that all of council knows. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nancy Hulbert. I am the office manager. I replaced Melody as of end of April of last year. So I have been in this role almost a year, and yeah. And Harbor and Matt are both out of town, so I am acting harbor master this week. Yeah.
Look at you.
I know. I do not enjoy being in charge. I'll just say.
And Nancy, I know you've been a good resource for the board also and have attended quite a few meetings. Yes.
Any new contracts we should know about?
Well, good, thank you guys. This is the annual, you know what, in past years, we used to be able to sit around a table. It just seems kind of weird like this, but it's less collaborative, which is my word of the day. But I know you guys have been doing excellent presentations and reviewing about our housing situation that we have. And have been doing a really deep dive in that, which that is super helpful. And I guess it's more of a question for administration. So after all those presentations, not that we need the solution to the problem, but is PACAP going to maybe have a work session and discuss and make some recommendations, or what is that going to look like?
That's a question for administration?
Well, I don't know, like, what does PACAP envision? I mean, they definitely need administrative support to do something like that.
So,
Go ahead.
Mayor Terry, if I might, in background, I was chair at the time, and Brandy has taken over and led our group, but at the time that this dragon first raised its head, Stephen came to us and said, one of the things that PACAP could do, if I get this wrong, Stephen, correct me, but if could do to help the administration would be to vet the problem with housing and sewer. And as such, we developed a plan to solicit presenters and gather information. And I think between the administration and PACAP, we're still working on how to compile that into a meaningful report. But we do have interim information if you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been attending those meetings, but I think that to me is the key thing, that you guys are working on a lot of issues, but I don't know if that to me was my item I wanted to talk about tonight, which I'm gonna get in trouble with the clerk, because the first thing I'm supposed to ask you is, so I think most of you are here, but you heard we're having the state come and give another training like they did for us. And the date options are the evening of May 10th through 13th, which is a Tuesday through a Friday, or on Saturday, May 14th, and it's about 3 or 4 hours. Is there any preference on this board for those dates?
It's 3 or 4 hours and we're gonna do it at night?
Yeah, so it sounds like you would prefer the Saturday.
I think Saturday makes more sense, but Wednesdays are bad for me, so if it ends up on a weeknight, I would prefer it not to be on a Wednesday night.
We've actually taken Thursday off.
Yeah.
I forgot that we did that.
All right,
Okay.
we're leaning towards Saturday, it sounds like. Okay.
It's a very valuable, council's
It's
done it
really
to us, and you're really gonna be happy with it. But sorry for that, that was my,
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
can I just add, as related to the presentations that PACAB has had, the clerk's office has been working on compiling all the notes for that.
okay.
So we're sort of standing by to see how it's gonna manifest.
Okay, and then I interrupted you, sir, so I'm going back to you.
It's your meeting. I'm not sure which question to answer. I prefer having my weekends free to myself.
So that's,
I'll meet anything, I'm probably as flexible as anybody, so
so
you call the meeting, I'll be there.
So housing, what kind of, do you envision that would be helpful with the housing, with all the presentations?
Well, I'm quite frankly awed by the experience and knowledge that the administration has shown, their background in other places and the research that they've done. So I feel like a little Johnny-come-lately to this. I mean, there were issues that I had no idea about. Our chair and others knew about H1 or J1s or whatever they were. I still don't completely understand it, but I do know, long and short, is that there are professionals and non-professional people that cannot find the kind of housing that used to be available in Seward. We've listened to the real estate people. We had a tremendous presentation from Nicole Lawrence and Jenna Peterson both. Both of them spelled out the hot market that we know is common throughout the country. It's not just Seward now. I mean, we can feel this in Seward, but this is not unique to Seward. It's pretty apparent to me that the number of housing units, and most of us came to Alaska with this idea about independent living and, our own home and a woodlot and all that business, but most people just want a place where they can raise their kids or have a family, a kitchen, and those aren't even available. We have teachers that are staying in their campers, and they quite simply said, this is not a mark of passage. I can say what my wife and I did to get to where we are, but that's not the point. These are people that we want to draw to Seward. And those things that are most important is a decent place to live and a decent place to live and a location with the kind of things that makes life worthwhile. We've got the outdoors, we've got the recreation, we have a lot of those things, but we don't have it all. The bowling alley, I think we all remember the bowling alley went away. There aren't a lot of after-work activities for people in Seward, and people need that. And then the cost of things, this is crazy, but it's not something you can control. The one thing, and I don't want to monopolize it, but the one thing that I would like to see that we haven't seen is some builders talk to us. And I'm quite sure Larry Harmon, who's a dear friend of mine, his dad built my house. Larry's first job was at my house, and he's way better than that today, but he's overloaded. And he is not going to help, he is not by himself going to dig us out of this problem. So we need to recruit outside builders, and that means attract them to town, and the only way to do it is to make it financially viable for them. And the city does have some opportunities and has been working that way to help. But it's not just that. It's talking to the financial support. It's talking, will the Cuddy Bank help them with local loans? Will Wells Fargo or whoever. And I'm talking about the Spinells and the Hall's Custom Builders and others. Unfortunately, nothing's going to happen overnight. But it won't happen until we start. And I know the Fort Raymond thing is good. I think the mayor and I talked a little bit about the kind of housing. You know, the single-family homes aren't gonna get it. Jenna Pedersen talked about a facility that they built, which I think was a 9-plex or something like that. It's booked. You know, if those are economic, from a business perspective or construction perspective, those multi-unit buildings are much cheaper to build. And as long as they're not trashy, you know, they've got a lot of appeal. I'm gonna shut up for a while. I think the rest of the board has listened to this same stuff too.
So I think to speak directly to your question, there was some discussion at the very beginning of the process about what to do at the end and how to determine we've reached the end. There was discussion about, and I wasn't here for this, but at some point in time there was some kind of community forum on energy at the library. I don't know who led it, but there was input from sort of the same kind of groups, and then citizens could select what they felt were priorities and things like that. We talked about creating that same kind of public forum for members of the public to come to and hear the same kind of information and give direction of where they felt. Because we've established the problem, the next step is to move to a solution, and where public officials versus private entities fall in finding those solutions and where the community feels the responsibility is. So I think that's what we'd like to see come out of it, is some kind of action item that gets thrown back. We just see ourselves as a collector of the information and we're passing it on.
Madam Mayor and council members, Seward at one time, we all know about this, it's a little historical perspective, was a year-round community, economic community. We had businesses that operated year-round. Slowly, we have transitioned to a seasonal economy. And with a seasonal economy, which many communities have experienced this around the country, like Tahoe, a few of the ski areas, they've had to enact planning and zoning measures for any new land that became available for development that limited the type of development that could be done on it. Because what's happened is every opportunity to buy a house, someone's invested, bid way high to get the house and turned it into an Airbnb of sorts or seasonal lodging, because they can make more money doing that. If we want year-round housing, then planning and zoning and the council have all got to come together and say, look, we have to limit that type of growth and make the new land available. Any new land, there is land out there to be developed. Make it available only for the type of housing we want and need in this community year-round. And you have to be willing to stand firm on that. That's my little speech.
Great, thank you. And I just tack on to this, if the borough or the state opens up land as well, the city would be well to coordinate with the borough so that they have zoning that encourages the right kind of housing to be built. Because it won't do us any good if we get the borough to open up some land outside of town and then all of a sudden it's all Airbnbs.
They're a second-class borough, so I don't believe they have zoning, planning and zoning powers.
Yeah, there's no zoning.
At
So
this
they
point,
have
they have
to
no zoning
change,
power.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it needs to be looked at as you're negotiating. That's my only suggestion. Are we going around the room, or what are we doing?
Well, I just kicked it off, just so we can, did you have some comments?
Just a minute, maybe the council can direct some things to us to comment on and then send it on to zoning and planning. And I'm thinking about some city codes, some properties as far as setbacks, lot size, zero lot lines, just to increase the buildable sites in town. So we could look at it. I think it's pretty much zoning and planning would have to sign off on it. But some ideas that would increase building sites might help.
Thanks, Fred. I think part of what Fred just mentioned is something that I'd like to discuss with this group as a whole, and something that we've taken some time to discuss within our committee as well, is just really wanting feedback from you guys on where we as a committee should be focusing our attention and our efforts. Housing is huge. We've been dealing with that. It overlaps planning and zoning. It overlaps different things. We've spent some time on energy, which has been really beneficial. Some great things have come out of that. PACCAB as a board originally, as you know, started with port and commerce, and if you read our directive now as written in ordinance, it basically is anything that can be done for the good of the community, which is a pretty broad scope to be handed as a commission, as a board. And so we would just hope that you would help, we serve to provide useful information and feedback to the council. And so we're hoping that through this, you'll also give us your guidance on how we can best serve you. We've obviously identified some pretty significant needs, and how would you like to use us moving forward?
Does anyone else want to kick that off? Well, go ahead. I just agree that in watching your meetings and looking at your lists, you've got so many things to deal with, and I've heard you say before, it would be good to maybe even just prioritize better. Maybe not get rid of some things, but just say, these are the things we really need to focus on, and then focus hard on those, perhaps. I don't know which ones, but, like you say, originally it was port and commerce, and that has become everything. So, which is all interconnected, but some specific priorities that you guys can agree on and us would be good. I'm not sure which ones. We probably have to hear from you more, the ones you would value the most, perhaps.
I was mayor, assistant mayor, vice mayor. I think our commission is, our board has just recently taken this up to determine whether, in fact, our mission needs to be refocused. I think I'm the longest serving continuous member on the board, and I've seen a variety of chairs. I cannot think of a time when we weren't able to meet the challenge of the issues that were presented to us, and the priorities really, they haven't changed, they've just been enumerated better. I think a broad term of port, which I personally assume is not just seaport but airport, goes along with commerce, which is not just port commerce, it has to do with all commerce. You asked a minute ago about housing. Well, housing is so tied, and job retention or employee retention is tied to the quality of life. Quality of life is an economic, commercial activity. The chamber has a very broad reach. When they look at commerce, it is a chamber of commerce, and they look at all those things that go into adding up to a strong community and strong commerce. So I think it's important that we not overload ourselves. I think that there has been one or two meetings recently where we have had presenters, and it has somewhat gotten away with some discussion. Case in point was the spray pad, which came up at the end of a meeting we didn't have time to discuss. We did discuss it at the next meeting, and it didn't, and the harbor was able to answer questions in a satisfactory manner. The public was able to ask their questions in a satisfactory manner. I agree with the chair that if you, as a council, want to direct our attention, as the administration did, to particular things, it would help us. But leaving all those things on the table as topics or placeholders that you could say, yes, this is something that PACCAB can look at, because quite frankly, the community can bring almost any problem that doesn't fit into planning and zoning or the history to us as an initial vetting before it goes to council. Now, if it were me, I go right to the horse. I go right to council. But sometimes it's easier to come to a lesser group.
A lunchtime meeting might be more available.
Yeah, a little less formal, sometimes a little less public, and not less public, but fewer people there to make you nervous. But I would hate to give up. I know Board Member Paquette and I, and former Chair Laura.
Schneider, yeah.
Yeah, we were on an energy group, climate group, and we did meet and we did have some progress. I think that's a broad group in Seward now, and that Solarized Seward has come to our group and presented the Blue Tide. You know, all these people have come and presented to us, and sometimes they're not wasting council's time, because that's their last stop. They ran out of gas or whatever, but they haven't come to council, it didn't waste your time. Not that it was a waste of our time, but better us than you.
Recommendations to a body that can, go ahead.
I love this commission. I really do, because it does sort of, it creates that container for everything that doesn't fit into the other commissions. And it is a place where people can come before they come and burden you with it, right? It can kind of get vetted and sorted out at our end before it ends up in your lap. A couple of things that I just want to talk about, and because maybe it will help give you ideas of how to give us direction or what to give us direction on. I really have a hankering to have somebody be working on the strategic plan, and I don't know where that is in terms of anybody having looked at it, but it hasn't, we don't have one. The last one is dated 1999, and I think the reason I bring it up is that I think that the strategic plan really sort of goes together with figuring out this employee retention. And it's because it all really comes down to the definition of what we want Seward to be. And if we want to shift back into a more year-round community, then strategic things have to happen in order for that to evolve, right? And then, I don't know where the comprehensive plan is. It's supposed to run through 2030, I think, but that's just a few years out, and I don't know. I feel like those are things that we could be tasked with, that would dovetail well with some of the other things that we're doing. I do see...
I agree with all of that, but I also think that, you guys are my, I love Port and Commerce Advisory Board. I come all the time. I just think you guys are a workhorse. But I don't want to lose sight of the harbor, because I think the harbor is our economic generator.
Absolutely.
It's the engine in this town. It's so important, and I hope that...
absolutely. I don't want to lose the focus on the harbor, but I think that we're a pretty talented group, and I think we could probably multitask.
You have the ability to juggle.
I do. The one thing I want to be straight up on, and I know we voted on it, and I don't know where my head was at the time, but I really, where it says submit a climate action plan to council for adoption, I really think that is outside our scope.
Okay.
I think we can submit the data that we've developed, that we collected.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, 5 bullet points up from
long-term goals, right. And I feel a certain amount of responsibility for that item, because when I got seated on PACAB, I was the one that brought up the idea of we're one of the few Alaska communities, coastal communities, that doesn't have a climate action plan. And so Laura at the time felt that it was an important thing and jumped right on it and was very enthusiastic about it. And we did a lot of work. And then COVID hit, and sort of all the wheels have fallen off. And in the process, though, of all the work that we did, it became very clear to me that this is like way big, and really way outside our scope of talent and resource and time.
I think I agree. I do want to cut to the chase, because we only have 5 minutes, but that's good, Linda, thank you. The resolution that's coming back towards us tonight, about the ad hoc committee, I had some questions. I was gonna propose, which, you guys can't vote on it, but I'm looking for input, a 7-member ad hoc committee board. If I can get, we'll see if it passes tonight, but I was gonna propose a 7-member ad hoc committee board.
Good for you.
5?
Good for
Would
you.
that be, would we be on it?
No, you would create a 7-member ad hoc. So I'm looking at the resolution that got
Yeah.
voted to us, and it was very general what you gave to us, so I was thinking 7 members. Okay,
Ma'am.
yeah, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I was at the last meeting where you postponed the vote on this, and frankly, I'm glad you did. I chose to go home, I was tired, and I did watch the end of the meeting, and I appreciate the logic you used. And quite frankly, if I had been there to answer questions, I wouldn't have been prepared. Much better prepared. And since then, I've also done some legwork. If you want to speak specifically about it, I'm going to speak in the public comments at the
Yeah.
beginning of the meeting, and if it comes up for meeting, I'll speak about it again. I think that the two major issues is the size.
Yes.
An odd number is nice, 7 people. I have 6 people that I would propose right off the bat. They include a lot of professionals, engineer-type business, and user participants. That 7 is a workable number. When we had the airport board, it was 10. It was a little larger group, but quite frankly, we had a whole divergent number of attitudes on there, including environmental group, like Carol Griswold, a very, very reasoned position, and some very, very strong development position. We had unanimous votes. So it's not impossible for people with totally different views to come together, and 7 people seems like a good number. The second is the Open Meetings Act.
That was my next question.
I have no problem with that. I chair a Kennebec Peninsula Advisory Planning Commission, and we work under the same OMA rules that you do. It is not a burden. You do need to respect the ability to meet and not wind up that being an octopus or growing beyond a small group and then becoming a sort of an unofficial meeting. But those things are not hard to do. And as far as cost, I have a volunteer, or we have a volunteer, and how we make the selection, Mayor, I'm not sure, but one of the people that definitely would like to be on it is Mary Tugas. She has volunteered to be the secretary, and and take minutes, and they will be accurate minutes that would be available, which are required for OMA presentations. And as far as a way to simplify this, standardized meetings with a fixed schedule date. And if you cancel a meeting, it's simple, but putting the public notice out there so it's a repeatable every second Tuesday or whatever the heck it would be, would be a simplified manner for the clerk and reduce costs.
Can I ask a question of the clerk? So those meetings, can they just be noticed as a meeting? They wouldn't have to necessarily publish an agenda, correct? Or
No, I
how
don't
could?
think they work off an agenda.
Okay, so they could just like in your calendar, that could just be
Just so that
published?
the public's aware that it's happening and that they can attend.
So we're sensitive, the group of people that I've talked to is sensitive to both city costs, over or under simplification, or overcomplication, or undersimplification.
Yeah, yeah.
It's important that you stay in the middle and abide by the rules and be functional.
Okay, great.
And the whole idea is to, and I'll say this in my comments, is to assist council and
Yeah.
administration,
Yeah.
not to supplant or replace or take away in any sort of way.
So when I, again, monopolize this meeting, my apologies, council to PACCOM, anything?
Well, I've had an opportunity to attend some of the meetings, although normally because of my work schedule, I can't stay for the whole thing, but I think they're doing some really good work for us, and I appreciate the time and effort you guys are putting into it, because I know it's, you all have lives, and you all have jobs, and you all have other things going on, so I really do appreciate the things that you guys have been doing, and just keep up the good work.
If I might, one more thing. We have benefited by a chair and vice chair that both are even-handed and strong. And Fred is our new member, hasn't said much tonight, but his input is valuable, and I agree with Board Member Paquette that it's fun and feels worthwhile. And if it's not, I would ask someone to tell us that we're not doing the job.
Okay. That sounds good. I don't hear that being said at the dais.
No. No.
That is great. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is planning and zoning.
Roses and sunshine.
Thanks, Nancy.
I saw Sue earlier today, and she told me that we're going to spring. She's already handled it. She's made the phone call. Is that what you said?
It took you so long, Sue.
You took care of spring. It's going to happen.
Spring, I have proclaimed.
That's right. She told me today.
I forgot what I told you. I said it was a proclamation. Oh.
She said it was dialed in. There was no more to do.
Windows.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That makes me very happy, makes me smile.
That's all right. I'm about to.
Welcome, planning and zoning.
Can I suggest that you the news, because I don't think everyone knows what
I was thinking we should know people because we appointed them. You're right. Up here? Yeah. Okay.
How many,
I suppose.
I don't know if everyone.
We'll go around because everyone's super new.
The baked ones good. Are those good? Baked ones? I love these, like, love those too much.
This can't be good.
They're good. I like them.
I didn't put my fossil over there. You would have got me.
Oh, really?
No, thank you though.
So welcome, planning and zoning. We do have a lot of new people on planning and zoning, so we can go around. I don't know if you know us as well. We know you because we appointed you, but maybe even for the public, Jason, would you, let's go this way and introduce ourselves all the way around. Jason, and I'll let you kick it off.
All right. Am I introducing myself or am I introducing everyone else?
No, if you introduce yourself. If you want to say who you are and what your role is, and then we can all introduce ourselves.
All right. I'm Jason Bickling. I'm Community Development Director. Stephen Soul, Assistant City Manager.
Jeanette Bauer, City Manager.
Randy Wells, council member.
John Singer, council member.
Christy Terry, Seward citizen and mayor.
Sue McClure, council member.
Mike Calhoun, council member.
Brent Berlin, the clerk.
Chris Beck, Deputy City Clerk.
Brent Mercer, Commissioner on PZ.
Vanessa Murphy?
Claire Sullivan, Commissioner.
Troy Staggs, Commissioner.
Welcome. Thank you guys for coming tonight, did we do this last year with COVID, or we canceled doing this last year? How did we do it? So this is something we do annually, and we check in with our boards and commissions. Jason, with this, P&Z is pretty prescriptive, so you have a lot of tasks, a lot of jobs in code. So I don't know if you want to kick it off, we talk about what's on the resolution and what you guys have been working on?
Yep. Let me pull that up right now.
Sorry, I could have warned you.
Yeah, so we kind of, what I basically did is take our goals from last year and then chop them up a little bit, and then we discussed them, kind of our goals from the last couple of years, and kind of see where we're at, and break them into short-term and kind of like ongoing. I guess it's more like priorities, I think is a better way to put it. So obviously just to, I think our number one thing that we can do outside of the normal duties is help contribute to the housing issues or be part of those conversations, which I think as I'm getting a little bit of traction now, being in there a little bit, we're going to be digging into shortly, but we have had some conversations about those items. That'll be like our topic on an upcoming work session on the 19th, specifically about short-term rentals and regulation, well, put it that way. And then 2, we are in the process of doing a major, I would say, housekeeping on reviewing and updating the municipal lands inventory and management plan, and so complete new maps. And so there's a lot of them. Selena, how many?
86.
86, okay. So there's a lot of new maps that Selena made, but we want to make this a very usable document for our community, for the council, and for our commissioners. And so we'll have that.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, let's introduce the staff.
Yeah, I was just
thinking that. So, Courtney's back! Yay! So I wonder if you two could introduce yourselves also, sorry.
Yes, I'm Courtney Greenhurst, and I'm the city planner. And I'm Selena Soto, I'm the planning assistant.
Great, thank you guys. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I appreciate that interruption. And then obviously we're going to be going back and tackling the Title 15, some dwelling definitions. There's a few other things that we're going to put in there, but also as we're dealing, that also ties into short-term rentals and how you have definitions around those things. And so I think we're going to be coming back to you guys with a couple different layers. And kind of our strategy too is to be chopping them up into more usable, reviewable chunks as we bring them back to you guys. And so that way, if there's something that we need to go back and get work on, we're just working with smaller parts instead of the whole thing. And so I think that'll be a little bit better. And then we are doing some planning and zoning commissioner training, and you need to ask us about things too.
Yes, I do need to ask you. So the dates again are, gosh, good thing everyone's here to keep me honest. The evening of May 10th is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
The 11th and 12th are already nixed. Friday the 13th, which is a very ominous date, or Saturday, May 14th. Does anyone have any conflicts or preferences around those dates? And so what we're doing on those dates is, it was phenomenal. The state will come and give training on Open Meetings Act, statutory items surrounding our home rule city, and just some general overall training. And we've really benefited from it, and we wanted to make sure our boards and commissions could also benefit. So I don't know, we're just kind of taking a pulse on if any of those dates work better for people.
I'm open for any of those. I'm good to go.
Saturday, May 14th would be like 10 in the morning to maybe
10 to 1, and we'll feed you lunch? That sound good?
Kind of work through lunch.
Good.
Is that going to be recorded at all? Because I'm going to be on basically all May.
It might be on Facebook Live, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what organization, tell me again, I'm going to say it wrong, that's why I'm asking.
Seward Civic Engagement.
Seward Civic Engagement is willing to record it?
And if we could do it in here instead of in the library room. That's what we could stream that.
Yeah, it might even be interesting to stream. It would depend on how many people are in here. Yeah, good, so let's look at a couple different options, but that's a great idea.
So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And so, back to you guys.
Yeah, so then obviously we are getting really busy right now with just getting into the normal season of business of reviewing CUPs and variances and rezones and replats and all that kind of work as well. So, but then the continuing is just kind of what's in our, I guess our charter as a commission, which when we went over our things, we read that first out loud, just because we want to make sure that it's always good to have that in front of you as your guiding document. Of what we're doing. So, and also what we are going to be doing as part of our work session on the 19th as well is just doing a quick overview for all of us to go over our, we talked about it earlier, not the strategic plan, but the comprehensive plan.
Oh, comprehensive.
The comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Just because it's always good for us, because that's also kind of one of our other guiding documents. And so we're going to be going over that as well, just to make sure we're familiar with those things, and as we make decisions, we should be staying within those bounds. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of our goals, priorities.
I was encouraged to see you starting to work on that municipal lands plan, because I think that that's going to really help with some of our housing difficulties, and having that mindset, looking at that plan will make a big difference. Any questions or comments from the council? Go ahead.
There is your number 7, in continuing, or I guess, continuing priorities. Work with historic preservation to develop methods to preserve historic downtown. So you've got that as one of your priorities, just so people know that.
That's kind of, I think, one of those things we work with, we work with PACAP, we work with Stewart Bear Creek, and we work with historic preservation.
Right, you're kind of the glue.
Yep. Yeah, we are kind of the glue-ish, so, yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we'll have something come before us that we will remit back to PNC once we take a look at it. And then, looking at that, so I know you just recently had a work session with the Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Board, and those happen, help me remember, quarterly, annually, periodically?
Sometime between there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had our, so they was, it's basically just Stephanie walking through us with that document, with our mitigation plan document, and just understand, a lot of it's just learning and understanding it, because there's a lot.
That hazard mitigation.
Yeah,
plan.
and so, yeah.
And then number 6, just for, with PACAB, on the Seward Marine Industrial Center, City Manager Bridges, I remember having a joint meeting, you were there, I believe, at the library community room, looking at that SNCC overlay, and I think that's even more timely now to work. And I think PACAB has the capacity to look at some of that too at the same time.
Yeah, agreed. I think our lands use, and of all our lands, is definitely a priority.
Anything from the board? From the commission, there's 2 brand new commission members. I don't know. It is nice because you are a prescriptive body, so just by route, there's a lot of things that have to come to you to move forward. So there's always those tasks that have to happen. Go ahead.
Can I ask who the other current commissioners are?
We have Victoria Monaco, and she was just recently brought onto the commission, and she had a family emergency, so she couldn't come. And Nathaniel Charbonneau has been on the commission for quite some time.
I've been trying to think of who that's on there.
He's excused this evening. He had some prior engagement that he had to take care of.
I just couldn't.
And we have 1 vacancy still that the council will have to vote on that as well.
Right.
And we're looking to fill the borough.
Correct. But we're optimistic with the Borough Planning Commission.
I believe I just got that application put in earlier with Brenda.
Great.
And we so appreciate that.
That's excellent.
But if I could say that I've been on there for just maybe, just under a year now, and so my first PACAB meeting was the other day when we had that. That was like drinking from a fire hose with all the stuff that was going on there, and then trying to put together, what they're working on, what we have responsibilities for, not just here, the day-to-day kind of things that Jason brings to us that we'd have to vote on or, assess. But the development of different areas, whether it's the overlay of the land inventory and the land use program, but also too the definitions, because if we don't have the definitions correct, then the land use stuff is not exactly going to be in concert with that. My concern is, because I've been on this thing again, not quite a year yet, but with the definition, that seems to be a driver of a lot of what we have, and it's at times almost like we're playing whack-a-mole, because we'll bring something forward, and then council will say, well, could you relook this or do this, and maybe like what Jason was saying, is bringing it down to smaller chunks, because we're just like dartboarding it. Well, what do they not like?
Yeah.
And then we have obviously our discussions ourselves. So I'm looking forward to be able to nail that down, because once you get the definitions done, I think you're able to be able to push forward with other things, because then we're all working off the same sheet of music, whether it's PACAB or historic preservation. We all know the same kind of thing, and I think that'll be pretty beneficial.
No, I agree with you. That's very good insight. Having those smaller bites makes, then there's not as many community concerns also that they're not missing something in a large document.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Okay. Good. You look like you want to say something.
Well, it's, the whole thing, a lot of this all stems from the housing issues that we have.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as I kind of looked at it, the short period of time I've been back on the council, and going to the PACCAB meetings that I've been able to go to and listen to the different presentations from the different organizations in town that have concerns about housing, the thing is, private industry solves housing issues. The city, obviously with planning and zoning and everybody's input in planning and zoning, working their, the definitions, that all helps us make our decisions. But all we can do is make it easier for people to develop what we have. There's a lot of vacant land inside the city of Seward. Who knows why it's not being developed? Is it because people know that the property's worth a lot of money and they want to wait until it's worth more money? It's too expensive to build a house right now with the cost of materials and that kind of, who knows? Who knows why that exists? But private industry will solve that issue. All we can do is make it as simple for them to do that while still protecting the integrity of Seward and, and everything that Seward is. And so, we have a housing shortage to a point, but we also have, if we tighten up our regulations on vacation housing a bit, maybe tighten up our R1 zoning plan a little bit, maybe look at putting a cap on the number of vacation housing units that the city allows. Those are all things we have to look at. And we can even look at communities in Alaska that have, there's a lot of people that left Girdwood and moved to Hope because they were going through the same thing that we're starting to go through here. And so I think it's going to be important for us to get a handle on that. And I think planning and zoning is doing a good job of starting to do that. And PACCAB also getting the input from all the users. But it's always going to be private industry that solves it. And we just have to figure out how we can assist them to make that a little easier.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think one of the points that you're making is it's not a one-size-fits-all. You've named a number of things that the city can either get out of someone's way or put a system in place that makes doing some things easier. Yeah, I agree with you. Now, well, we definitely appreciate planning and zoning. Is there anything else from the administration side?
I would just concur with what you're saying. The thing that's nice right now is that there's a lot of communities going through that, which is not a nice thing, but there's people that I would say are a little bit ahead of the curve on us. And so there's a lot of great articles and resources about like what they're doing and how it's working. And so like places like Tahoe, which was mentioned before, and Breckenridge, like Colorado ski towns. And that is, you have to do multiple things basically. They said, you have to address your short-term rental issue. You have to make sure you're developing land properly. You have to make sure your zoning code fits that. And so they said that's not one of those things that's going to be like the golden thing, but multiple approaches. So we're going to be digging into that pretty heavily.
Great, and I think your resolution that we've approved with your, I guess they're not goals, but the priority short-term and continuing, I think that was the most well done and thought out of all, and I think we're moving towards having those priorities be not just year to year passed along, but really intentional on what you're doing. So I think when I read through yours, I don't have any comments or changes. I think those are all very appropriate. So with that, I am going to go ahead and move out of the committee of the whole. Do I need a motion and a second? I move.
Nope, you just make a statement.
I move out of the committee of the whole. And we're on to citizen comments. Is there anyone in the public that wish to make comments? Go ahead. There's no, I think, if she stands there, can she be heard, do you think, Brenda?
Should be.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We will never have enough housing for everybody who wants to come to Seward. And I think we just all have to realize that. And that's not what I think people are pushing for. What people are pushing for is enough housing to sustain a year-round community. You know, to hear that the principal of the high school is getting booted out of his apartment on April 1st and gonna have to go live in an RV, and is walking past the 5 houses that he put offers on, one of which he paid $100,000 over the asking price, and didn't get a response from the seller. That's where the problem is, right? That we need sustainable housing for the people who need to live here. Anything beyond that, you know, people are on their own. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, next on the agenda is council and administrative comments. Administration, I'll start off with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, thank you for the meeting tonight, and I just had to respond to the strategic plan that we are actually digging in on it, so it's perfect timing to bring that up. And thank you. As you can tell, there's an overlap with each board and commission, and it's really exciting to see because then we're all pushing towards the same goal, and I really appreciate that. All the boards, commissions, council, we're all on the same page and moving forward, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Wells?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the commissions and boards for your presentations today, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Calhoun?
Yeah, the same, thank all of them, thank you for all your work. I know that it's, everybody's busy, and these boards and commissions are doing a lot of good work for the community and for us to help us do our job better. So just want to thank everybody for that, and I'm sure we will give you more to do.
Councilmember Osenga?
Just ditto, thank you to the boards and commissions for today's meeting. I think you guys are all doing a fantastic job. Everyone's working really hard here, so thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Ditto to that, too. I really appreciate when people step up and do community service. It's truly community service. I was telling Mr. Staggs that that's how I began my meteoric rise to the top. Was as soon as I moved to town, I got on planning and zoning. And I went from planning and zoning to exactly where he's hopefully going, to the Borough Planning Commission, and then I got elected to the Borough Assembly, and then here. So it's where people start, and sometimes where people just find their niche right there. And I also have to say that, you know, as president of the Historical Society and seeing on our Historical Preservation Commission, 4 of the people that come to my Resurrection Day Historical Society meetings, that gives me hope that history will be preserved in Seward. Not an onerous history, but history, so people are aware type of history, and I will push for that forever.
Thank you. I'll just make it unanimous and really, truly thank the board and commissions for their hard work. It's great to see people that are passionate about helping the community, utilizing their skills. And I moved to Seward and started in 1999 as the community development assistant in that department.
Your meteoric rise.
My meteoric rise. How many? I'm dating myself. You know, it's just sometimes a thankless job when you have to hear from folks, but we very much appreciate it. And, you know, the city couldn't run without our boards and commissions, and we appreciate people's input. Helps us make better decisions. So with that, I'll go ahead and call the work session to a close. Thank you.